Next on Currents News, the Commander-in-Chief taking on the role of Consoler-in-Chief, making stops in Dayton, Ohio and El Paso, Texas. A blow to pro-life advocates. A federal judge has now blocked abortion restrictions in Arkansas.
Catholic students inspiring their teacher to take on a well-known New York Democrat in the next election. I'm Emily Drewby, and that story is ahead.
Plus, a woman fighting for her life gets one final wish, marrying the love of her life from her hospital bed. The news starts right now. Good evening, I'm Tamara Lane. Today, President Donald Trump visited Dayton, Ohio and El Paso, Texas. The community's still shaken after a weekend of gun violence. With First Lady Melania at his side, the president met with victims' families and first responders. Whitney Wild is in El Paso with the latest.
President Donald Trump traveled to Dayton, Ohio this morning, meeting with local officials before making a stop at Miami Valley Hospital. There, he met medical personnel and some of those affected by last weekend's mass shootings. Also on the ground in both cities, supporters and protesters of the president's visits. Dayton City Commissioner Darrell Fairchild penned a letter to the president asking for action.
There are things he can do. He doesn't have to wait for Congress. He has some steps he can take with some executive action. He could start to put funding towards research and development of safer guns.
And in El Paso, the mayor acknowledged the divide.
I realize that there's a lot of emotional pain and concern over his visit, but I'm the mayor of all of El Paso, and I feel like it's my duty, obligation, my fiduciary duty to meet with the President of the United States.
The president said Wednesday that he is open to talking about some aspects of gun control legislation.
I'm looking to do background checks. I think background checks are important. I don't want to put guns into the hands of mentally unstable people or people with rage or hate, sick people.
But it's unclear if Congress can reach a consensus. The House passed 2 gun control bills, but the Senate hasn't voted on either one. In El Paso, Whitney Wild, Currents News.
Stay tuned. We'll speak with Bishop Frank Duane. He helped lead the USCCB's response to the shooting massacres. He'll be talking about what's next. That's still ahead in this newscast. Congress's next action on gun control could be passing red flag firearms control bill. Some Republicans are voicing support for the measure. The legislation would help law enforcement take guns from those who pose an imminent danger to themselves or others. If signed into law, a red flag bill would be the most significant gun control legislation in 20 years. We are learning more every day about the shooter in Dayton, Ohio. Former classmates of Connor Betts are saying the 24-year-old had a disturbing obsession with violence. Randy Kay has the latest from Dayton.
Some 41 shots were fired in under 30 seconds as panicked patrons ran for their lives. 2 new surveillance videos show the chaotic scene in Dayton, Ohio, as a 24-year-old gunman unleashed terror on crowded streets. Now, former high school classmates say the shooter had a troubling past.
Connor had this hit list of people he wanted to harm or kill.
He just was an angry person who acted on his actions, and the warning signs were missed.
A newly discovered Twitter account believed to belong to the shooter reads, quote, "I'm going to hell and I'm not coming back," as part of the biography. It also shows retweets of anti-police and extreme left-wing posts. But unlike El Paso, where the accused terrorist outlined his racist political motivations in an online post, police in Dayton don't know what motivated Sunday's massacre.
Came around the corner, heard 2 shots, pop, pop.
Dion Green thought he and his father had been spared until he saw the blood.
I see the blood just coming from both sides of his head, and I just lost it. He looked at me, he was breathing, and he just lied there with his eyes open in my arms.
So he died in your arms?
That's me.
In Texas, authorities now say the gunman that shot 22 people dead at this El Paso Walmart claims he stopped there for food. He drove some 11 hours from his home in Allen, Texas, to the border city and targeted Hispanics in his attack.
I saw him reloading the gun.
Maribel Latine was shot twice.
He shot 8 more. bullets. I counted them because I said one of these is going to be mine.
The 21-year-old gunman was unarmed when he drove up to a motorcycle officer near the Walmart, put his hands up, and surrendered.
The Betts family has released a statement saying they are shocked and devastated by the murders. They are cooperating with law enforcement. The Texas archbishop who accused President Donald Trump of spreading racism and hate is backing off those charges. San Antonio Archbishop Gustavo Garcia Siller made the accusations Monday night. He's now writing that his ministry is to build up unity and that the previous tweets, quote, were not focused on the issues but on an individual. We do not need more division. New turmoil tonight in Puerto Rico. The Supreme Court there ruling that the new governor who took over last week was sworn in on unconstitutional grounds. The unanimous ruling ousts Pedro Pierluisi and paves the way for Wanda Vazquez, the Secretary of Justice, to be sworn in as Puerto Rico's governor. Vazquez has said she does not want the job, but would fulfill her duties as next in line. A pro-life abortion ban in Arkansas has now been blocked. A judge ruled that the law prevents abortion after 18 weeks of pregnancy would cause irreparable harm to women seeking the procedure. The ruling also blocks a new law barring providers from performing an abortion if the baby has Down syndrome. Now to South America, where the crisis in Catholic Venezuela is growing more critical tonight. The United States, in a meeting with delegates from over 50 countries, put the Maduro regime on notice that it will be squeezed by new sanctions. National Security Advisor John Bolton, speaking at a summit in Lima, Peru, warned all nations against doing business with Caracas. President Trump is banning goods and services from entering Venezuela. It has now been 5 long years since ISIS first invaded Christian homelands in Iraq, with constant attacks forcing thousands upon thousands of believers to flee, and the fight is still not over. The Chaldean Archbishop of Erbil, Bashar Warda, warning the population faces extinction. Melissa Butts has more on the plight of so many faithful.
A nightmare began in Iraq 5 years ago, and it's still difficult to wake up from it. In the summer of 2014, militants from the self-proclaimed Islamic State took Mosul and Nineveh plains in a lightning attack. From Mosul, a city with 3 million inhabitants, 150,000 had to escape in a single night, with only the clothes on their back. They were mostly Christians, Yazidis, and moderate Muslims who did not accept the interpretation of Islam imposed on them by jihadists. An ultimatum was given to these civilians: die, pay a tax, or convert to Islam. Afterward, the terrorists took over the entire Nineveh plains, destroying everything in their path: the unarmed population, their houses, and their churches. They captured women and children, making them slaves. This document breaks down the cost according to the woman's age and whether Christian or Yazidi. Those who managed to escape took refuge in Iraqi Kurdistan in the north of the country. Since the beginning of this crisis, Pope Francis has been very aware of the destiny of these Christians. In December 2014, he sent them this video message that was screened in the streets of Erbil, Kurdistan. He assured them he desired to be with them soon. Security conditions and the battle against jihadists have caused the Pope to postpone his visit to Iraq. However, the idea has never entirely been thrown out and could soon become a reality.
Un pensiero insistente mi accompagna pensando all'Iraq, dove ho la volontà di andare il prossimo anno, perché possa guardare avanti attraverso la pacifica e condivisa partecipazione alla costruzione del bene comune di tutte le componenti, anche religiose, della società, e non ricada in tensioni che vengono dai mai sopiti conflitti delle potenze regionali.
Pope Francis has remained close to the Yazidis, whom the jihadists hated. He met with the ethnic group's highest authority in the Vatican and with Nadia Murad, Nobel Peace Prize winner and slave survivor by the Islamic State. The terrorist group was militarily defeated in 2017, although there are still thousands of missing people, especially women. Reconstruction after the invasion is slow, but even slower is the return of refugees, who will never forget the drama they experienced. Melissa Butts, Currents News.
A new report from the Pentagon says the Islamic terror group is resurging in Syria. Just a few months ago, President Trump said ISIS had been defeated. But according to the new report, even though the group lost its territorial caliphate, it was able to strengthen itself hiding out in Iraq. The report also warned about the fallout of U.S. troops leaving Syria, saying it has impacted the fight against the remnants of ISIS. Over 1,100 churches have now been legalized in Egypt. Previously, it was forbidden to build churches near schools, canals, government buildings, railways, and even residential areas. Local Christian communities frequently ignored the law and built churches without government authorization. Now, new rules have been updated in a manner that is supposed to guarantee freedom of religion for Christians. There's a lot more news headed your way. Meet the Catholic school teacher who is mounting a long-shot bid to topple Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez next year. One of America's top archbishops is speaking out, saying only a fool would believe gun control will solve the problem with mass violence. And road signs are popping up in one state. They're not reminding people to slow down, they're reminding people to pray. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is a freshman in the U.S. House and a headliner in the national media. Best known as AOC, she's up for re-election next year. A Catholic high school teacher is trying to take her on and take over her seat. Emily Drewby reports from the Bronx on his run for office.
And that's my building right there. That's the back of my building.
New York's 14th congressional district is where John Cummings grew up.
It was a great place to grow up.
Had his first job.
These are the other two buildings that I delivered papers in.
And has his current teaching job.
And that's a middle school and there's our school.
Now he's fighting to represent the district in Congress, mounting a bid against current Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, drawing inspiration from the school he attended and where he now teaches.
My students have been after me to run for many, many years.
Like many people, the St. Bramon Catholic High School civics teacher used to think it was an unwinnable seat held by Democratic powerhouse Joe Crowley.
Now Congressman Ocasio-Cortez pretty much came out of nowhere and defeated him. So it was pointed out to me by my students that that was a pretty lame excuse. Now I'll use their terminology.
So now John's hitting the campaign trail. The former NYPD officer knows he has a long road ahead. First comes the Republican primary with 5 other announced candidates, including Cherie Murray. She's called Ocasio-Cortez a crisis for Queens, and Ruth Papazian, who blamed Ocasio-Cortez for killing the Amazon deal. If John takes the primary, he would then face off against AOC, a formidable opponent. In the last election, she won over 78% of the votes, trouncing her 2 opponents. Since winning, Ocasio-Cortez has made a name for herself nationally, promoting liberal causes and sparking disputes with more moderate Democrats in the House. But John, who's either lived or worked in the district his whole life, is ready for the fight.
A very long time ago, I was told, God makes the plan and we don't get to see the plan.
With his Catholic faith, his lengthy law enforcement and education background, John is ready to represent the people. The Republican primary election for this district will take place in June. The winner of that will face off against Ocasio-Cortez in November of 2020. In the Bronx, Emily Drewby, Currents News.
And although the primary is a year away, it is never too soon to register to vote. You can sign up anytime online at ny.gov/services/register-vote. Now, from the Bronx to Times Square, where chaos erupted after a motorcycle backfire was mistaken for gunfire. Fearing there was another mass shooting, crowds rushed away in panic. The NYPD quickly put out the word that everything was okay, but a handful of people suffered minor injuries in the rush. Philadelphia Archbishop Charles Chaput is saying tonight that gun control laws alone will not stop mass shootings in America. He says the nation must look deeper and transform today's culture of violence. He argues that only a fool can believe that gun control will solve the problem. Instead, he says the twisted hearts of the shooter are shaped by, quote, the culture of sexual anarchy, personal excess, political hatred, intellectual dishonesty, and perverted freedoms. After gunshots rang out in El Paso and 13 hours later in Dayton, the U.S. bishops issued statements in rapid succession. Venice, Florida Bishop Frank Duane, the head of the U.S. Bishops' Committee on Domestic Justice and Human Development, co-authored what was said during that turbulent time. He joins us now. Bishop Duane, thank you so much for being with us. You and your brother bishops are calling these massacres an epidemic against life. Are you saying this is a pro-life issue?
Not only as a pro-life issue, but certainly it's taking life. But it's epidemic in a sense that it's just not a sickness. These, the week kind of filled with shootings, and those are the ones that merit the reporting. If we dig a little bit deeper, we see that this gun violence is really permeating our society, and that's a real problem. That is an evil there.
A statement from you and USCCB President Cardinal Daniel DiNardo also said something remains fundamentally evil in our society. Do you think this evil comes from the secularization of our culture and the breakdown of family life?
Well, I think those are contributing factors. It doesn't arise solely from that. Evil, the church has long time taught what evil is. But I think we have to look at the fact, first of all, we need to pray for the families of the survivors of those who have been shot or injured so that they're able to deal with this. But then we need to take time to look at our society as a whole. What is it that there is that space there for this kind of thing to repeatedly keep happening? We have to look long and hard. Not that the bishops have all the solutions. One of them is certainly prayer. You and I, we need to remain engaged in prayer, praying that people are safe, particularly when they go out with their families, with their loved ones, and we hear about what happens. No one should have to live like that in what we call, quote unquote, civilized society.
Well, expressions of faith are increasingly banned in daily public life. Does that contribute to the American crisis? And how much does faith become prominent again?
Well, I would hope that faith would have a resurrection. The bishops call for prayer, and early on where there's the shooting, some said, well, kind of enough with this prayer. No, that's who we are. We have to continue to pray. We have to continue to give that witness of who we are as men and women of God out in society. And that means standing up and speaking out. And it means invoking the Lord to keep us safe, to keep us free from harm. Really, when we say that, we mean free from evil. Because I believe that that pandemic we see out there, it is evil manifesting itself.
Well, let's talk about some possible actions. The U.S. bishops have long advocated for responsible gun laws. What would you like to see enacted?
Well, I think we could begin with the background checks that are spoken of. Even in some states that's done already, but we need to do this on a national level. We hear a lot right now about something called red flagging. Mm-hmm. Well, red flagging has its potential, and there are states who are using that also. It's a similar kind of thing, like background checks, but an early identification of a difficulty. We also need to get greater control on the kind of guns that are sold. We saw the short amount of time that this individual was firing, and the large number of people who were killed. Yep. So we need to look at what kind of guns, not only who has them and who can get them, but what kind of guns and ammunition do we have out there in society, and is that necessary?
Bishop Frank Duane, chairman of the U.S. Bishops' Committee on Domestic Justice and Human Development, thank you so much for being with us today.
You're most welcome. It was a pleasure.
Still to come on Currents News, there's some new street signs popping up around one American town, reminding people to stop and pray. A woman on her deathbed gets her final wish, marrying the love of her life. Meet the hospital staff that made it all happen. And the tablet has a brand new page called Our Diocesan Family, where you can share your pictures of recent baptisms, Holy Communions, confirmations, marriage, all the joyous sacraments. For more details and to submit your photos, go to thetablet.org/ourdiocesanfamily. Your picture may be published in an upcoming issue of the newspaper. We'll be right back. Prayers in public schools was banned by the Supreme Court more than 50 years ago, but that hasn't stopped Christians in South Carolina from encouraging students to look to the Lord. They're setting up school prayer zones. Vanessa Frazier of Christ Teens is one of the people behind the project.
You know, we want this next generation that's coming out of our public schools every 365 days to be, productive citizens with wisdom, understanding, knowledge, skills and abilities, and everything you would want from a graduating class.
The zones are winning the backing of churches and schools who say prayer needs to become more regular. A woman in the fight for her life had one big wish. It involved the love of her life. Alexandra Stone reports from Omaha, Nebraska.
The happy hum of a wedding day fills the air. Bouquets are bundled, final decorations arranged, and rings ready.
It's the power of love.
But this wedding is taking place in a hospital room.
I'm just so happy that she was able to get her last wish.
31-year-old Melissa Jordan is suffering from incurable liver and renal failure. When she expressed her desire to marry her longtime partner and fiancé, Banerjis Duran, the team at CHI Bergen Mercy made it happen.
Originally, we thought we'll just go out and buy a dress and buy some flowers and do something real simple. And on a whim, last Wednesday night, I decided that I would put a post on this wedding Facebook page that I'm on.
Nurse practitioner Deborah Reeg says strangers stepped up to provide a dress, photography, cake, flowers, and more. And so Jordan spent the morning of her wedding day as many brides do, getting ready to see her groom.
Ready to see your bride?
Oh, I'm ready.
The couple say their vows, the same spoken at countless weddings before.
You promise, love her, respect her.
But here they seem to mean much more.
You'll be on my side, and I'll be by yours, no matter what.
Jordan can't speak, but her promise to love is just as strong.
Once I saw her, I was like, wow, that's really her. That's really her. That's my wife. That is my wife. That's all I have to say. That is my wife. Now and forever.
For Mr. and Mrs. Duran, this day was the ultimate celebration of commitment and love for a lifetime.
Now and forever, okay?
Alexandra Stone also reports that Jordan's sister Elise called the wedding better than anything she could have imagined. Finally tonight, the medal is awarded to American heroes wounded or killed in combat, the Purple Heart. And today is National Purple Heart Day. The medal bears the image of George Washington since he created it in 1782. While Purple Heart records are incomplete, experts estimate nearly 2 million American heroes have been honored with the medal. And we thank every one of our military for their service to our country. That is Currents News. I'm Tamara Lane. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.